she was tough as old boots, the Queen. She's sat down, had, you know, dinners with dictators. She spoke to all sorts of people, had all sorts of undesirables, you know, that she's had to sit down and engage with. It takes a lot to upset her. Why would she have been so upset about Meghan's approach, do you think?
She's very, very tough, very pragmatic, but I think deep down she was, you know, she was a grandmother and, you know, she was very, very fond of Harry. I mean, I think they were extremely close and probably the two most popular royals that we had at the time. You know, I just think that she worked her whole life, you know, trying to make sure that the monarchy succeeded after her and you know, the legacy was the most important thing to her, and the Commonwealth, of course, as well. And it must have been absolutely heartbreaking for her to see, you know, A, what was happening with Prince Andrew, and B, what was happening with Harry and Meghan leaving in her final years, you know, and to cope with that as she was, you know, approaching the end and Prince Philip died and all this, you know, happened right at the end of her life, I think must have been absolutely heartbreaking for her. And I think, sadly, that is probably the thing that people won't forgive Harry and Meghan for, making her last years a bit of a misery.
Yeah. But Meghan, on her side of the coin, when she did her Netflix show, for instance, she said, or I think when she spoke to Oprah, is one of the two. I spoke to Oprah or Netflix. She's gone on record and said, I've always got on very well with the Queen. And she references the trip that they shared to Chester, where I think the Queen, the late Queen, put a little rug over her legs when they were a little bit cold. I mean, there was potential there for a bond, but it fell apart quite quickly.
Yeah. Fun enough, went up on the Royal Train, didn't they? I think, which we're going to talk about.
The Royal Train.
We're going to talk about in a minute.
It's a great segue. So the Royal Train. Now, this is... How do you feel about the Royal Train? Because I've looked at pictures of the Royal Train recently inside. It does look a little bit dated. It is kind of an old train. It's not like the Hogwarts Express or anything like that. It's not something that looks absolutely... It's not the Orient Express or anything like that. It's not that, you know, train of luxury. But they are getting rid of it. And it's been around for 127 years. Buckingham Palace has said that we cannot afford it anymore. They would have to spend a lot of money in 2027 just to get it back on track, so to speak. Are you sad that this institution has gone?
Not really, because I feel like it's kind of in line with where the monarchy is going as well. So we have to remember that it's quite expensive to keep it running. It's kept near Milton Keynes, and every time that they want to use it, it costs a lot of money just to getting on the train tracks. And it
costs 1.2 million roughly a year just to keep it running.
Exactly.
And they used it twice last year, and I think it was about 89,000 that it actually cost just to do these two.
And before that, it was, you know, William and Kate used it, I think, during lockdown as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think it fits really with the kind of persona that King Charles tries to put out there, especially as a green environmentalist. I mean, he has like green cars, for example, that run on biofuel. And I think this, you know, diesel guzzling giant train that they hardly use, that's not environmentally friendly. I don't think that's the image that he wants to put out of the royal family and of Prince William. Now, I do think it's sad that they're basically going to rely on helicopters.
That's right.
It's not exactly, you know, a fishing boat.
And how much is that going to cost, replacing the helicopters?
But I do think there's something to be said about, you know, just reserving a first-class train on a normal train that we all use just for the royal family. I mean, I know the Queen was very fond of it. That's the sad thing. The Queen and Prince Philip were very fond of it. And she actually had an office for herself built on the train so she could work and make the most use of her time. But I also don't think that in the era that we are in now with King Charles and Prince William, who's also very passionate about green issues, this is the right fit for them, especially how it comes across to the public. And so it's sad, but I do think it's necessary.
Phil, is it just an inevitable goodbye to something that's run its course? Or
I think it was inevitable. I mean, personally, I think it was a massive mistake to get rid of the Royal Yacht Britannia when they did in 1997, because that was something that sort of projected a bit of soft power abroad, and it was used by the government for trade fairs and things like that. So I think that was a mistake, but it's inevitable they had to get rid of the Royal Train. It was only being used a couple of times a year. I think the writing was on the wall when the Queen died, and they didn't even use it to bring her back from Scotland, which was always in the plan, and they just abandoned that and flew her back. So I think it had to go. But, I mean, the Times made a very interesting point yesterday, a very scathing article saying that the royals were now on a gravy train and getting far too much money from the sovereign grant. And in fact, they'd offered up the royal train as a sort of distraction to take people's attention away from the fact that they're just earning too much money. And so, you know, that's getting all the headlines, get rid of the royal train. So that's an interesting point of view. But I think it had to go. But as Esther says, you know, what sort of environmental example is it setting to be flying around in helicopters all the time? Yeah. You know, when we were all being told a few years ago, take the train and don't get in cars, you know, and now we're getting the complete opposite. So it doesn't really fit in with the King's green credentials, but I think it had to go.
I think they can't win either way. if they kept it, people would say, it's something that the Queen was very passionate about, it's emblematic of the royal family. But if they didn't keep it as well, it's just, it's a distraction because they're earning too much money. I mean, the £100 million that had been granted for the refurbishments of Buckingham Palace, there is a public good there. If you go anywhere near Buckingham Palace, it's always full of tourists. A tour alone will cost about £60 per person just to tour Buckingham Palace. The British public makes a lot of money, and there's a lot of financial good that comes from just tourism that the royal family generates. And so they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. But I personally think this was the right time to get rid of the royal.
I think at the moment the refurbishment of Buckingham Palace, which is clearly necessary, the rewiring and plumbing and everything else, which is ancient, got to be done. But then after that's over, I think they really do have to make some serious decisions because they've just got too many homes. And when sadly the king dies, William's going to have the choice of Windsor, Balmoral, Sandringham, Buckingham Palace, Highgrove, Berkhall, Adelaide, list goes on and on and on.
Should the royal family not have...
I know some of them are private, but they've, it still doesn't, it's not a good look to have 7 or 8 homes, is it?
Do you not think the royal family should have lots of homes? It's the royal family. Do you
I
not
think
think
they
should
should
have helicopters, they should
them.
have trains, they should have a yacht. This is the whole idea.
Yeah, I think they should, to a certain extent, but I think when you've got too many... I think Windsor Castle should be turned into a permanent museum open to the public as a sort of shrine to the Queen, who, after all, is buried there. I think that would be a good use of that. I mean, you've got 1,000 rooms there, and it's only used, occasionally. All right, it's going to be used for state visit next week with Macron because Buckingham Palace is out of action. But I think eventually they've really got to make some big decisions about all these properties because it's ludicrous having them all.
You touched on the money there, £369 million that's come from Crown Estate money. It's a very complicated system where the profits in the Crown Estate then get, hived off by a certain percentage to repair Buckingham Palace over 10 years. Because of COVID and because of, I think there was delays due to some of the constructors, they weren't able to do any work. So they've had a temporary uplift of more than 100 million this year to complete Buckingham Palace. Do you think is it worth the money? Do we want all this money spent on a grand Buckingham Palace that people can visit and we can have state visits there?
Absolutely.
They're going to get the money back, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
If they open it up more, then, if they open it up, 10 months a year as opposed to how many months is it open now, 4 or 5 or something, whatever. If they've
extended it over the summer now.
Yeah, extended it over the summer. That they will get the money back, so that's fair enough. But it's a question of what. But I thought it was also rather interesting. I didn't think it was a very good look for William not to reveal what income tax he's paying. I think it's a very strange thing. His spokespeople say that he's paying the maximum income tax on his profits from the Duchy of Cornwall. But why not tell us what that is?
What difference
I don't
does it
understand
make?
the point of keeping it secret. It's just not a very good look.
I understand why he's keeping it secret because I think there is such a thing as too much exposure. And when you give the public too much to talk about, again, he can't win. He could pay so much in income tax, but people are saying, but then you must be earning this much. And then we get into a back and forth about what he's actually earning. You do have to realise that the royal family are kind of in a fishbowl. So they may be fabulously wealthy, but they can't really enjoy it. They can't walk around with like Rolexes and in ostentatious garb like some of the people you see flaunting on Instagram, like Andrew Tate, for example. So, I mean, there has to be limits on what you can share. And this is why I also agree with sort of Prince William's approach to streamlining the royal family, like many European royals have done, and downsizing it to have like, they just need 2 homes, really. That's all they can make a use. Sandringham and Buckingham Palace. And just make everything else something that the public can enjoy.